Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Benji-Sales live chat. It's so good to be back. It's so good to see everybody. How are you doing today? We've got some great topics that we can talk about today. We're actually getting some pretty heavy financial results news right now. All of the big video game companies are pretty much ending their fiscal years or their quarters, and they're all reporting. So we've got a whole bunch of numbers and data that we can talk about and dive into today. Obviously, the two big ones are going to be PlayStation and Nintendo. We got a whole bunch of data from that. I'm going to break down for you here in just a second. Of course, we've also had EA and Ubisoft and Capcom also report some stuff as well. So if you guys have any questions about that, we can talk about those as well. Those were a little less interesting, obviously, than Sony and Nintendo's results, but there was still some interesting information out of that. In terms of other big video game industry news, there hasn't been a ton in the last few days outside of the financial results. So that's kind of the main highlight. So I think that's probably the main thing most of us are going to be discussing here today. But you can ask me about anything you want. Doesn't have to be the financial results. That's just obviously going to be our big main topics. Now, if this is your first time ever as part of my live chat, the way this works, it's a stream, it's a show, it's 100% driven by you, your comments, your questions. You just drop them on down into chat, and I get to as many as I possibly can over the next about hour and a half or so. There's going to be two ways to do that. First of all, of course, there's the free method. You just type a question, whatever you want, it pops into chat, and I get to as many free questions as I possibly can. If you want to guarantee that I get to your question, the way to do that is going to be the super chat option. Type a donation, whatever you want. It pops into the super chat, and I get to those immediately. Don't feel pressured or obligated, though, to donate into the super chat. It's just a way to make sure I get to your question and also help support me and the channel. All right, before we start diving down into those comments and questions, I'm going to give you a brief overview over Sony and Nintendo's results. That way we have some context around the numbers and the data. Okay, so first let's start with PlayStation. So for the quarter, for the last 3 months, PS5 shipped 2 million units. Now this is very, very low. However, it's exactly what they forecast and exactly what we all expected because they gave us that update last earnings, right? We had warning ahead of time that this quarter was going to be really, really bad. So 2 million PS5s, honestly, that's a really bad number. However, in context, it's not terrible because they hit what they said they were going to. And we know that this is driven primarily by shortages and not demand, right? Demand is still way higher than 2 million units in a quarter. They just can't make more than 2 million last quarter. So that's how many they shipped there. That brings PS5's lifetime shipments now up to 19.3 million, getting close to that 20 million mark, but it continues to fall quite a bit behind PlayStation 4 launch aligned. In terms of units of software, 70.5 million units of software were sold last quarter between PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. 14.5 million units of first-party games. That was a big jump. They actually sold more first-party games this last quarter than they did during the holiday season. That's really good, but also they had big new releases, right? Whereas during the holidays, obviously you're going to sell a lot of software during the holidays anyways because it's going to be a lot of legacy software selling, but they had big new releases this quarter, so that drove a big jump in software sales for first party games. They had Gran Turismo 7 and Horizon Forbidden West during this earnings period. Digital software ratio, 71%. So digital continues to be huge. That's full games. 71% of PlayStation games sold were via digital. 47.4 million PlayStation Plus subscribers and 106 million monthly active PlayStation users. The other big data point here that we got out of Sony, and this is one that I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of questions about because this is a pretty interesting stat here. Sony's forecasting they're going to ship 18 million PlayStation 5s this fiscal year. That's a big jump over last year. Last year they did 11.5 million, so I'm hoping they can hit that number. I'm sure there's going to be a whole bunch of questions about it, so I'll wait and save a little bit more of the deeper analysis on that number until I get your questions, but that would be big. I really hope they accomplish this because going from 11.5 million units to 18, I mean, that's a big jump. You're talking about a lot more PS5s getting out into the channels this year. So hopefully they can actually hit that. And then really quick to give you an overview of Nintendo before I start diving into your comments and questions. Nintendo shipped 4.1 million Switches last quarter. Great result. Switch lifetime is now at a colossal 107.65 million units. Just unbelievable. Incredible result for Switch. Still a ton of life in the tank. They're forecasting they're going to ship 21 million Switches this year. So that's incredible. If they hit 21 million this year, that'll be yet another year Switches over 20 million units in a year, which is just an outstanding result. And it's going to pass PlayStation 4 lifetime this year. So that's pretty huge milestone too as well, right? We all know how successful PlayStation 4 has been. Switch is going to pass it this year. This year, Switch will surpass PS4's lifetime sales. For the big new releases that we got this quarter, Pokemon Legends Arceus, gigantic, 12.64 million units. That's incredible. That game launched in January, and it's already over 12.6 million shipped. That's just outstanding. And then Kirby and the Forgotten Land at 2.65 million. Obviously, that looks a lot smaller than Pokemon, but that's a great result for a Kirby game, especially because this is only a couple weeks of tracking. So looking really solid there for Kirby as well. And they sold, here's a big stat for you, 235 million units of software this last fiscal year. It's the highest annual software sales ever posted for a Nintendo platform. Amazing. Think about how big Wii was. Think about how big DS was, 3DS, etc. This was the biggest annual sales ever for software for a Nintendo platform. So just incredible. And then here's your really quick top 10 best-selling Switch games for first party. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is at 45.3 million. I mean, what do you even say about that? 45 million? This thing is going to be over 50 million very soon. That's just unbelievable. Animal Crossing New Horizons, 38.6 million. Outstanding. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, 28.1 million. Breath of the Wild, 26.5 million. Pokemon Sword and Shield, 24.2 million. Mario Odyssey, 23.5 million. Super Mario Party, 17.7 million. Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, already at 14.6 million. Those games just came out last holiday, and they're already the 8th best-selling first-party game ever for Nintendo on Switch. Incredible. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee at 14.5 million. And Ring Fit rounding out your top 10 at 14 million. So there's your results. There's your results for Sony and Nintendo. If you have any questions about any of those numbers or anything in the video game industry, start dropping those questions down into chat. And I'm going to start rocking now on your guys' comments and questions. All right. Is the mic good? My mic's not blowing anyone's eardrums out, right? I think we're good. I'm not seeing any comments about it. So hopefully we're good. SplitEnd89 kicking us off here with a 2 super chat. It's just a kiss wink emoji. Thank you so much, SplitEnd89. Best mod in the business. Great friend of mine. Thank you for that super chat, buddy. Thanks for helping me out with all the modding on the channel and just being a great friend. Timmer72299 here with a 5 super chat. Thank you so much, Timmer, in every chat and always supportive. According to John Romero, the budget for Doom 1993 was $500,000. Do you think that number for the time is too low or too high? Plus, hit that like button. Thank you so much, Timmer. Yeah, I saw this. I think he was responding to you, right, Timmer? I think you were asking him about this, and he gave you that number. That's pretty awesome that he gave you that data point. That's anytime you can get data like that, that's really interesting to find. It just continues to show kind of what I talked about before. It's incredible how cheap, quote, quote, it used to be to make games. Obviously, $500,000 in 1993 is going to be a lot different than with inflation, what $500,000 would be nowadays. But even still, even factoring for inflation, that's just so incredibly cheap compared to what games are made for nowadays, right? Especially big ones. Even indie games aren't ultra cheap. Even if you're, if you're one person on your own, you might be able to get away with a pretty darn cheap budget, but even as soon as you get a couple people involved, they can be cheap budgets, cheap by video game standards, but it's never, anytime you're past a few people, games start getting very expensive very quick. And AAA games now, as we know, tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars. And once you factor in marketing, you can get to crazy over $100 million budgets on some of these things when you factor marketing as well. It's just unbelievable how much it has increased since back then. So for the time, I mean, a lot of games back then used to be developed for fairly cheap. 500,000 does seem lower than I would have expected even for back then, but I'm not too shocked because some of those games, man, even some of the legendary games we think of were developed for super cheap. So thank you so much for that super chat, Timber. Thanks for digging up that info, and thank you for always being so supportive. All right. Super chats are cleared. Let's start diving into your free questions. Ken B. Benji, April NPD is coming up. Looks like PS5 came back strong in Europe. Yes. Great results in Europe for PS5. Do you expect the same in the US? Also, do you think something knocks Elden Ring out of number one? Okay, great questions here, Ken. So we had to wait forever for March NPD, right? It was funny. I had even someone comment on my tweet whenever I posted the March NPD numbers, and they said, I feel like I've been hearing about March sales for like months now. And it's true because obviously we started getting data for how games were performing during March while it was happening, but then NPD came so late. It was like at the end of April that we were basically talking about March in terms of sales numbers for like 2 months. Luckily, we had to wait forever for March data, but April NPD is coming up quick. I believe it's this Friday. So we don't have to wait super long. We're going to get 2 NPDs kind of back to back, thank goodness, because the last time the delay was a real bummer because it took forever. So we have some early numbers out of the UK that are looking great for PlayStation 5 in April. It was the #1 selling platform for the month, and most importantly, it saw a huge jump in sales. I believe it was 50-something%. I don't remember the exact amount. It was like 50-something%. And it was the best month for PlayStation 5 yet this year. Great result there in the UK. I will say that the US, I am expecting an improvement over last month. It's a little hard still to say exact rankings on stuff because I've mentioned this before. It used to be a lot easier to make predictions on how things were going to sell whenever inventory was very stable. You know, you could keep track of how things it looked like were selling at different retailers and have a pretty strong idea on ranking placements. Nowadays, ever since the chip shortages have hit, it's been really brutally difficult to accurately predict placement rankings because everyone's getting such spotty and random inventory. So in terms of do I think that PlayStation's going to go from, you know, the worst selling platform that we've seen to like #1 in the US NPD, I don't know. I honestly don't know about that because it's just so hard to predict placements right now. What I can say is I do expect PlayStation 5 to see an improvement over last month's number. So I think it will do better than last month. But if it will be enough to overtake Xbox Series for the month or Switch for the month, honestly, no idea. It's just really hard to predict rankings right now. But it should at least be better than what we saw last month out of PlayStation, which is a good sign leading into this quarter, which is leading into this next fiscal year. And do I think something knocks Elden Ring out of #1? Yes. I think there's a really good chance Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga is the #1 game for the month. That game put up huge numbers. We got a whole bunch of data out of that. I think Elden Ring actually probably falls to #3 because I think MLB The Show 22 will also be ahead of it. So your top 3, what I'm expecting, #1 or #2 should be either MLB The Show or Lego Star Wars. That could go either way. Those should be your #1 and #2 games, and #3 I think is going to be Elden Ring. So that should be your top 3. Cameron Swear here. I appreciate the coverage of sales. Well, thank you so much. Just wanted your thoughts on Switch as a whole to this point. I'm completely blown away by the hardware/software sales. These numbers are unreal. Yeah, it's unbelievable, Cameron. It's unbelievable. I mean, think about how successful the Wii was, right? At the time, it felt like a true phenomenon. Like anyone that, you know, grew up or was around following sales during the Wii time frame, we all remember that console as just like such a crazy lightning bolt of success. And here's the reality. Switch is more successful. That is literally just the reality. It's going to sell way more units lifetime than we did in terms of hardware, and even software, particularly on that first party side, has just been unbelievable. We've seen so many franchises hit record highs for Nintendo, right? We've seen Zelda hit numbers it's never hit before. We've seen Smash Brothers hit numbers it's never hit before. Even Pokemon as a whole, right? Whenever you look at like the whole ecosystem of Pokemon games, they're selling at unbelievable numbers just across the board. I mean, this thing is going to sell. They're projecting still. Think about how late in the cycle we are for Switch. This console's been around for, what is it, 6 years now we're going into? And they're projecting it's going to do over 20 million units again this year. I mean, it's unbelievable, Cameron. There's really just no other way to phrase it. The Switch has just been a colossal success. Any metric you look at, colossal success. I think we had a super chat drop. Let me hit that super chat. We did have a super chat. Vision49 here with a 5 super chat. Thank you so much, Vision. Do you think Elden Ring's success is starting conversations at Sony about doing something with Bloodborne remaster/remake? Not sure how the OG sold, so it should be. If I've said this before in a lot of chats, people ask me a lot if Bloodborne's going to ever come back. It absolutely should. I've said this for a long time. Now, in terms of what you're saying here, not sure how the OG sold. Okay, as Bloodborne, for as beloved as it is, for how much hype it gets on the internet, how much discussion it gets, that game actually wasn't huge in terms of sales. It wasn't a bomb. So to be very clear, sometimes people like to think of games as either like the biggest thing ever or like the worst thing ever. Bloodborne was not a bomb by any means. It also, though, wasn't some colossal selling 15 million units type game, right? It was just a nice, sold a few million success overall, but nothing gigantic. However, I think there is so much demand and pent-up belovedness for that game, and especially now that we're seeing Souls games hit new levels, right? Elden Ring is a totally different game than Bloodborne. Yes, there is still some similarities, but there's huge differences between Bloodborne and Elden Ring as well. But I just think the overall lifting of like the Souls visibility between Dark Souls 3, which was a huge success, between Sekiro, which was a huge success, between Elden Ring, which was a huge success. I think not doing anything with Bloodborne would be a massive mistake. Now, whether that's a remake, a remaster, or even a full-on sequel, who knows, right? I don't know what Sony wants to do. But if they just never do anything with that IP again, if it just sits there and doesn't do anything, I honestly can't understand it. They got to find a way to do something with that because it will sell. Bloodborne, remake, or sequel, it would sell extremely well. Yeah, I think so, Vision. But we'll have to see. It's hard to say. Sony has, at least so far, not done anything with it since that game came out. All right. Bigelow. Hey Benji-Sales, that 18 million PS5 figure seems high when both Microsoft and Nintendo are forecasting lower hardware because of China going into lockdown again, and who knows how many times that will happen. Yeah, Bigelow. So one thing to keep in mind, the main thing that Microsoft forecasted was that hardware this quarter wasn't going to be great. So they didn't say, though, that the whole fiscal year is going to be bad for hardware. They basically were just saying that they expect the lockdowns in China right now to have an impact on this coming quarter in terms of hardware performance. So, and Nintendo is forecasting lower hardware than they did last year, but it's still over 20 million. And I think the main reason Nintendo's probably at 21 million and not an even higher number, I think they even realize that Switch at some point is going to start to just naturally come down. I was saying this. There was a big debate going on for a while about, I think it was last year, between, when was Switch's peak year going to be? And we've definitely passed it, right? Switch is on just that natural decline as it starts to head towards the end of its life cycle. Now, its decline, quote, quote, is still an incredibly high bar, right? We're still talking over 20 million units. But a console can't just sell 20 million, 20 million, 20 million, 20 million forever, right? At some point, that is going to slowly start to dip. And no doubt that lowering of their hardware forecast has something to just realizing, hey, Switch is going to, it's got a, year or two left in the tank before we're going to put out the successor to this thing. And it's just going to start slowly coming down. For Xbox, they are so not as transparent as Sony and Nintendo are with hardware that it's hard to say what they think they're actually going to sell this fiscal year for Xbox Series hardware. I suspect that they think for the fiscal year, they are going to sell more hardware than they did last fiscal year. So the 18 million number for PS5 is high. It's higher than I expected. Now, it's actually a bit of a decrease over what they were originally forecasting. They were originally saying last year that they thought they were going to get to over 22 million units this coming year. They brought that down to 18. But I was actually surprised that they still had this thing at 18. I mean, that's a big jump over last year. We're not talking they increased their forecast 2 or 3 million units. They're saying from 11.5 million to 18 million. So it is a pretty high bar with the shortages. I really hope they can do that. But keep in mind, like I said, Microsoft, I'm sure, is expecting to sell more hardware this fiscal year than last year as well. It's really just the quarter coming up that they're a little cautious on. So we'll have to see, Big Low. We'll have to see. All right. SD. Sony said they feel comfortable about those 18 million PS5 thoughts. Yeah, they think they can do it. And can you explain the 34 billion in investments M&A Sony's adding to all Sony Corp subsidiaries? More PS acquisitions could come. FTC reviewing Bungie could stop SIE to buy more studios. Okay, so couple things here. In terms of the 18 million PS5 thoughts, yeah, we've talked about this already quite a bit now. Sony thinks they're going to hit it. I really hope they're going to hit it. Keep in mind, they missed last year's forecast at the beginning of the fiscal year. They missed it by 3.3 million units, I believe, off the top of my head. I think that's the accurate number. They missed it by 3.3. So there is a chance that they miss this 18 million. We'll have to see how it plays out, but I am glad that Sony feels comfortable about it, that they feel confident they're going to hit that number. So I hope they can. Keep in mind, just because they forecast that for the year doesn't mean for sure they'll hit it, because they did miss last year, but we know the situation that led to the miss last year. It's really just chip issues. Hopefully things are a little bit more stable now and they can hit that 18 million. Now, in terms of the investments, and does it mean there's more PlayStation acquisitions coming? Yes, they are going to acquire more studios. They're going to acquire more stuff beyond just PlayStation as well, right? And their other divisions as well. But PlayStation is definitely going to acquire more. Jim has been very open and upfront about this, that they're not done acquiring stuff. Could the Bungie thing get shot down? No, that's going to have no issues passing. I can tell you that right now. I can't see any scenario whatsoever that Sony's not allowed to buy Bungie. They're an independent, individual studio. We're not talking about, what Microsoft's going through with Activision, where they're buying an entire publisher, tons of studios, giant amounts of employees. This is Sony just grabbing one studio. It's a big studio that owns big IP, but it's not a publisher. I can't see any scenario where that would be blocked. So they'll get it. It'll go through. And yeah, they're going to buy more studios for sure. I think we had a super chat hit. Let me hit that super chat. We did. Frostbite Slash with a 5. Thank you so much. Any reason why we never got any hard sales numbers for their first-party games this year? Yeah, I think there's a pretty big reason. I think it's because Horizon Forbidden West is selling slower than Zero Dawn. In fact, I think that's basically a guarantee that Forbidden West is selling slower than Zero Dawn. Any data point that we have that we can look at shows that that's probably the case. I hope it's selling faster, but I haven't seen any data that looks like Forbidden West is selling faster than Zero Dawn did. So I suspect that's why they haven't put that number out there, because they don't want the comparison. Now, we need to see how Forbidden West legs over time, right? We saw Miles Morales come out, and it did big numbers at launch, but what has been so impressive about Spider-Man Miles Morales' sales wasn't its launch numbers, it was its legs. To this day, I mean, if you look at they just released the April PSN most downloaded games chart for PS5, Sony did, and guess what? I believe, if I remember right, Miles Morales, again, is still in the top 10 most downloaded PS5 games this month. Let me double check that, because I don't want to be feeding you misinformation, but I think so, which is just nutty, man. It's completely nutty if that's true. Let me see again to make sure I'm right. Yep, number 9. Yep, in the US, Spider-Man Miles Morales on PS5 for the month of April, still the 9th most downloaded game. I mean, that's unbelievable. It doesn't look like Forbidden West is having those kinds of legs. In fact, it's already down in the April chart, down to number 12 in the US and down to number 14 in Europe. So the early indicators are that Forbidden West isn't going to leg like Miles Morales is, but I hope that it has really long-term success legs-wise. So we'll have to see. But why you haven't gotten that number, Frostbite Slash, I pretty much am confident the reason they haven't told you here's what Forbidden West is sold is because they don't want that number to be lower than Zero Dawn in the same time frame, and then for people to make that comparison and do the whole Forbidden West is a bomb, it can't sell as fast as Zero Dawn did, when I think there's a lot of factors for that. I think shortages are impacting it. Even though this game's cross-gen, I think shortages are impacting it because they want to play it on PS5, etc. So you will get a number eventually, Frostbite Slash. When they're going to give you that number, I don't know, but that's why. That's why you didn't get one for Horizon yet. All right, Super Chat's cleared. Thank you so much, guys. Joe Secchi. What's up, Joe Secchi? Great to see you. Benji, Nintendo mentioned the OLED manufacturing price increase during the fiscal year due to shortages, and they also expect OLED's sales share to increase this fiscal year. Switch price cut dream equals dead forever. Also, with the fiscal year results and forecast Capcom just posted, no one will ever buy them. I agree. Bandai Namco too beat their own video game guidance by 2 times. Japanese developers slaying. Okay, so let's break this down into 2 parts. First Nintendo, then Capcom. So yeah, in terms of a Switch price cut dream, is the dream dead? I think so. Nintendo just has zero reason to cut price. Like, that's just the truth. They have no incentive to. First of all, like you mentioned, manufacturing price going up because of chip shortages. People are having to bid and spend more money to get these parts made because it's a competition, right? It's not like it was before the chip shortages hit, where there's always been competition for this stuff, but there was quite a bit to go around. Right now, people are paying a premium to get stuff made because literally if you are a chip manufacturer, you have the power right now, right? Kind of like how they talk about like in a home buyer's market, sometimes the buyers have the advantage, sometimes the sellers have the advantage, depending on what demand is. Well, right now, if you're one of the chip manufacturers, all the demand, you have the advantage. Everyone has to pay you and bid you to get their parts made so they can ask a premium. So yeah, right now, the idea of a price cut, manufacturing prices make that just not make a whole lot of sense to bring that price down because it's going to impact your profit margins. And then B, as I've mentioned, they're forecasting yet again over 20 million units of hardware sold. If you think you're going to sell that again this late in the generation, no need to cut the price because at keeping that price high, you still get that bigger profit margin and you still think you're going to sell those units anyways. So I don't see it. I agree, Joseki. I don't see a price cut happening. I think they will eventually, but not until, the next Switch is on the market, whatever that ends up being. So yeah, probably no price cuts anytime soon. And then in terms of Capcom, with the fiscal year results and you thinking that no one's going to ever buy them, I completely agree. I said this before. People have been asking me, what publishers are going to get acquired, who's the best deals, who's in the best position. And I've always said I don't see Capcom as one of the likely ones at all. They're just on way too high of a trajectory. If you are Capcom management or if you're somebody invested heavily into Capcom that owns parts of that company, you have just no incentive to sell right now. They are on an incredible run. Their future continues to look bright. They think they're going to sell 37 million units of software this year, a record for the company. And they're expecting to sell more new software, right? Like brand new titles this year than the last 2 years. And the last 2 years had big games like Monster Hunter Rise, Resident Evil Village. They think they're going to do even better than that this year. So yeah, I agree. Joseki, completely agree. Capcom has zero reason to sell. I can't see anyone acquiring Capcom. There's just no reason for them to sell. All right, I think we had a couple super chats pop. Let me hit those super chats. Thank you so much, guys. Very, very kind of you. We did. Wow. We had, 2 of them. Kirby Louise with a very generous 20. Holy cow, Kirby Louise. That's very kind of you. Thank you so much. It's very generous. Remember that chat in 2021 Phil had with Take-Two CEO? Yeah, where they accidentally said Game Pass had 30 million subs, but when Microsoft announced the Activision Blizz buy, they officially said 25 million subs. What do you make of this inconsistency, Benji? Well, at the time, I thought that Strauss Zelnick, who's the one who said this, a lot of people were wondering, so I guess Strauss has that number, because why else would he say that? Here's the thing, Kirby Louise. What I think it was just an estimate that Strauss had. Of course, that Microsoft is going to share data with their partners. And at the time, I honestly wondered. I was like, Strauss might have this number because he's literally the CEO of one of the biggest third-party publishers in the world. Wouldn't shock me if whenever they're negotiating deals, Microsoft gave them that number. Here's the thing, though. I think at the end of the day, the reason there was that gap was because the 30 million subs probably was not accurate, right? It was probably an estimate that Strauss had. Maybe he had gotten a number at some point from Microsoft and it was already over 20 million. And so he was just in his head doing math, thinking they were close to 30 million. Because Phil himself corrected Strauss at the time whenever he said this. And he was like, well, the last number we gave was, I don't remember what it was at the time. Maybe it was like 17 million or something. And he was like, we haven't said anything past that. And then Strauss was like, oh, yeah, well, it's millions higher than that now. So Kirby Louise, what I think it was, somehow there was a mix up there, one way or another. Strauss maybe at some point had gotten, they were over 20 million subs, and in his mind was just extrapolating and saying, hey, they're close to 30 million subs now when they actually weren't quite there. So who knows? It could be a couple factors, but I think that's probably what it was. I don't think that literally Phil told him they had 30 million subs when really they had 25. You wouldn't do something like that to a major partner. So something in there, some wires got crossed, and I think Strauss was kind of just giving his estimate on where they were at. But thank you so much for that super chat. That's really generous. Anthony Johnson here with a 5. Thank you so much. The biggest shock of the week for me is Gotham Knights last-gen versions being axed. Yeah, that's pretty big news. Is fall 2022 a good transition away from cross-gen or too early? I had just said this in my last live chat. Someone was asking me, might have been Joseki, but I can't remember who it was. If next year is still going to be mostly cross-gen games. And I had said, no, right? Like I know of multiple games that are coming next year that are current gen only. So you are starting to see this. I'll be honest. I was surprised to see Gotham Knights drop the last gen version. In this case, I'm pretty much in favor of it because if they were having issues, you wouldn't cancel that unless you were having issues with development. If you're having issues getting that to work on last gen consoles, then yeah, it's time. Let them go. Focus on the current gen and just make it as good as you can. Obviously, if you're not having an issue developing your game right now in 2022 for cross-gen, like it's going fine, it's going smooth, then keep that last-gen version. I think that totally makes sense still this year with the hardware shortages. But if you're in an issue where you're struggling, dude, just axe it. Like we're far enough into the gen now. Yes, the install base isn't gigantic, but it's been a couple of years now, right? We're going into a couple of years. So we're going into year 2, like full year 2. Just go ahead and let them go. If you can get it to run, great. But if not, then axe it. So is fall 2022 a good transition away from cross-gen? I would say, like I said, for the industry as a whole, maybe not. If you can still get it to run on last gen, then that's totally fine. But if you're struggling, I don't think it's too early. You're probably okay. Would it make sense for Call of Duty, for example, to drop last gen this year? I don't think so. Next year it would make sense, but we're not getting a Call of Duty next year, right? That's been delayed till 2024. But for the biggest games, Call of Duty, etc., if you can still get that last gen version out in 2022, probably worth it. But I would say even into 2023, yeah, you're good now. You're pretty much good to start moving away from last gen, particularly if Sony can really hit like 18 million units this fiscal year. I mean, that's going to put it up to, what's the math on that? Sorry, I'm being stupid right now. That's going to put them over 37 million units, right? They'll be approaching that 40 million unit install base if they can hit that by March 2023. You got to factor in Microsoft. They'll be over 20 million units by then as well. You're looking at, 50 something, maybe even approaching 60 million units of next gen hardware next year, you don't need last gen at that point. So 2023, you really can move away from it. Right now, this year, though, it probably still does make sense to keep it cross gen if you can. All right, thank you for that super chat. Great questions today. Thank you so much, guys. I knew there was going to be some good questions today because we got a whole bunch of numbers, so we have context, right? I knew it was going to be a good chat. I'm really impressed with the questions today. Thank you so much, guys. I'm going to be biased and say that I have one of the most well-educated chats on YouTube. For real. Which makes sense. We talk about sales here, so we're going to be talking, you know, if you're attracted to watching an hour-long stream about talking about sales numbers, you're probably going to be pretty darn educated. But I'm going to be honest, I have one of the smartest chats on YouTube. Not like me, my audience. You guys are very well-versed. Very well-versed. I'm proud of it. Benji here. Benji, should we worry about Sony stock prices that have gone down since the Activision acquisition announcement? 40%. Furukawa seems to have gone out of his way in discussing the next gen in the investor meeting. Is it a sign that the Switch 2 is closer than expected? Two great questions. Okay, so first let's talk about Sony. Should we be worried about Sony stock prices? So it's not great, right? It's not a great situation what Sony's going through right now. The main vibe that I get reading some analyst stuff and reading some people talking about the market, the main vibe I get that's worry from investors is the install base of PlayStation 5, right? That's one of the big things. People are worried about the growth rate due to chip shortages and that impacting Sony potentially long term, right? We'll have to see. But potentially there's some worry that, hey, if you can't get this install base to increase fast enough, and you have mounting pressure and competition from, you know, let's say Microsoft and Xbox, and as well as Nintendo continuing to do well, there's some worry with the investing community that this could be bad for Sony long term. I personally don't quite fall into that boat because I think that PlayStation is going to continue to thrive and be hugely successful as soon as they can get units out the door. You know, there can be a whole bunch of debate people are going to have about who has the bigger upside between Microsoft and Sony right now with their differing strategies, with Microsoft trying to go way beyond the console. Whole bunch of stuff you can talk about there. But in terms of like Sony and PlayStation's business specifically, am I personally worried about them? No. I think once chip shortages improve, once they can get those units out the door, they're going to sell tons and tons of hardware, lots of games, etc. So I think it's a little bit aggressive how worried some people are about this. I wouldn't panic yet. I will tell you, Benji, if they miss their forecast again this year, if they're forecasting 18 million and let's say something crazy happened and they missed that by another 3 million again like last year, that would be pretty freaking alarming, okay? Not going to lie to you. If you miss 2 years in a row of your forecast by millions of units, that would be kind of a panic situation, to be honest with you. I don't mean panic as in like the sky is falling, but it'd be like, dude, what the heck? We literally, you're talking 2 years in a row now, you're missing pretty hard. So if something like that were to happen, that would be pretty scary. Right now, I'm not super panicked about it. I think that there's reasons why they haven't been able to accelerate the growth more. So we'll have to see how this fiscal year goes, but I think they're pretty okay. And then as to the Switch successor, yeah, this is pretty interesting. So for anyone that missed this, basically when asked about a Switch successor, you know, like investors do every single earnings call basically for Nintendo, which makes sense because like I said, Switch is getting pretty deep into its life cycle now. So it makes sense why people are always asking Nintendo, hey, when's that successor coming? Basically, they've always said a really generic, you know, or not generic, pretty specific, no, there's no plans for new hardware. This year was honestly a bit different. Now, does this absolutely mean that the Switch successor is coming soon? Not necessarily, but what was different this time was when asked about it, they said, we're not going to talk about it. Basically a no comment. That is different because there has been certain years in the past, particularly I think last year, where it was outright shot down. Flat out, Nintendo said, no, there's no successor, it's not happening. They did not say that this year, which is interesting. It was more of a no comment. Now, do I think that means that this thing is launching in 2023? I don't know. I'm in the position now with the Switch 2 or the Switch 4K or whatever it ends up being. There's been so many friggin' rumors about this now for several years. I'm in like a wait and see mode on when this thing's actually going to drop. Do I think, Benji, that the Switch 2 coming in 2023 is impossible? No. It's going to be 2023 or 2024. It is. It's one of the next 2 years. So once you're down into that, it's one of these 2 years. You're kind of in coin flip territory. You can predict 2023 and potentially be right. You can predict 2024 and potentially be right. But it's one of those. It will not be past 2024. I guarantee you that. They're going to need new hardware by then. So, Benji, it's possible. Do I think that this no comment outright confirms it? No, though it is a bit of a different answer than we've gotten before. But it's one of the next 2 years. It's going to happen next year or the year after for sure. All right, I think we had super chat hit. Let me hit that super chat. We did. We had a couple super chats. Thank you so much, guys. These are really generous today. Frostbite Slash here with another 5. Thank you so much, Frostbite. That's your second one of the chat. When do you think Sony will finally break silence? It's getting a bit frustrating not having any indication of what's coming next game release-wise. Yeah, I feel a little bit bad about this because some of the like big PlayStation fans that I even follow on Twitter, I've noticed even them just tweeting, like, not upset, but just like random, like, put it this way. You can tell that PlayStation fans, and this isn't meant as an insult, don't have a lot to talk about right now in terms of like upcoming. Because like you said, Frostbite, Sony's been so quiet. Like, we really don't know anything about what's coming from Sony anytime soon other than God of War. And even God of War, we got one trailer and we don't even have a release date, right? The other stuff that we know is coming in terms of what's announced was like so little shown in terms of Wolverine and in terms of Spider-Man 2 that, like, who knows, right? Like, that stuff, I don't think anyone's expecting them to show a ton on that yet. But that's about it. There hasn't been any big news from PlayStation recently in terms of games, right? There hasn't been anything like that. So I think Sony do need to talk soon. One thing for Xbox fans right now is they at least know, because Xbox has been in a somewhat similar situation, right? It hasn't been one of these scenarios where it's only PlayStation. Xbox has been in a similar scenario, but Xbox fans now know, hey, June, what is it, 12th? We're going to know. Like, we have a date. So they at least have that to look forward to. Whereas Sony fans are in a bit of a tough spot right now because there isn't even an announced date for a showcase. So who even knows, right, when you're going to get info? So I can see how that could be frustrating. When do I think they'll break their silence? I mean, it could go either way. I think that if God of War is still this year, it has to get shown soon. Has to. We're already in May. I mean, that game needs to get shown soon if it's legitimately coming this year still. Within the next month or two, in my opinion. They got to show something. So, if they don't plan on having a full-on showcase soon, I think you'll at least get like a God of War State of Play in the next, let's say, 2 months. I think a PlayStation showcase could be as far out as September. You know, I said this on my last live chat. I believe it was the last 2 years in a row, Sony's big showcase, right? Like, they did smaller state of plays, but their big showcase was in September, I think, the last 2 years. I hope it's sooner than that, but if past tells us present, it could be September again this year, which is a long wait. I will say if, and this is an if Sony's showcase is as late as September this year, I think you'll get something on God of War before that. I think they'll do a standalone God of War State of Play so they can get that date out there, get that hype out there, get those pre-orders rocking, get those collector's editions out there rocking. I think they'll do that beforehand, and then the showcase itself in September. But either way, you should at least have God of War info in the next couple months, if it's still this year. I mean, if that game's out of this year, then who knows? But if it's coming still this year, you should at least hear something in the next 2 months, I would think. Highlander001 with a 5 super chat. Thank you so much, Highlander. Fighting COVID. Oh, no, it's horrible. Horrible. I'm so sorry to hear that, Highlander. Everyone give your thoughts out to Highlander here. Hope you're doing well. With GDC being in person this year, do you see E3 ever coming back? Ooh, E3. Is E3 coming back? It pains me to say it, but I just don't think so. I hope it does, right? I've talked about this a lot. Going to E3 and getting to cover E3 was a dream of mine since I was literally a teenager, right? Ever since I was a teenager, E3 was always so hype for me. I would always take off work for it or take off school for it. Watch E3, it was so hype. And lo and behold, I'm finally in a position where I could probably get a press badge. I mean, I've basically been told this by people that I won't say, but I probably could have been able to cover E3 in person finally and get that dream made. And right whenever I hit that spot, that's when E3 died. So on a personal level, it's extremely painful. This has been a dream of mine for so long, and it looks like it probably won't happen. Do I think it's going to come back? I hope it does, but I'm doubtful. I'm doubtful. You know, the platform holders have kind of established now that they can show things on their own whenever they want and still be successful. You've seen things like, you know, Ubisoft and EA do their own shows. They're a lot cheaper doing it that way than going to E3. Those booths are super expensive. Flying everyone out there is super expensive. Getting demo builds made so that press can play these games at E3 is not easy. Like, there's so many reasons why E3, it makes sense to not come back. But I selfishly, as a fan, hope it does, but I'm doubtful. Highlander, I'll be just honest with you. I am doubtful we ever see E3 back in terms of like what it used to be. Hope so, but I don't know. I'm not seeing it, but I hope I'm wrong. Thank you for that super chat, and I hope that you beat COVID's butt and you're good really soon. Joseki here with the 2 super chat. Your 2022 game of the year. Minus 13 Sentinels, 10 out of 10 game. If you mean so far for this year, for me, it's easy. It's Elden Ring, and it's not close. For me, it's Elden Ring, and it's Elden Ring by a gigantic margin. Now, there's a lot of games that I still haven't played yet this year, right? But I have played a lot. But for me, number one, Joseki, it's Elden Ring. Nothing's actually, honestly, even close to Elden Ring. Like, it's Elden Ring, and then it's a big gap. And then it's the other games that I've played. So it would take something incredibly special to beat Elden Ring for me. I mean, for me, Elden Ring is not only my favorite game of the year so far, but it's one of my favorite games ever made of all time. So it's going to take something unbelievable to unseat Elden Ring for me personally. I don't think that's impossible. There's some big stuff coming I'm excited for. Really excited for God of War. Really excited for Starfield. Breath of the Wild 2 had potential to be that game, but we now know that's delayed until 2023, so that's not really in the running anymore. So there's still some big stuff coming that I'm excited about that I think is going to be amazing, but I don't know. It's going to be really hard to beat Elden Ring for me. The only 2 right now on the calendar that I look at as potential to unseat it for me personally are probably God of War Ragnarok and Starfield. Those are the 2 that I'm like, I'm keeping an eye on you. You're the 2 that might be able to do it, but they'll have to be phenomenal to beat Elden Ring for me. But I've heard 13 Sentinels is amazing, Joseki, so I still need to play that game. I really need to play that game because I've heard a ton of stuff about that being amazing. So, Joseki, that's definitely on my to-do list, for sure. I need to play that one. I heard the story's, like, amazing in that game. All right, where are we at? Thank you for those super chats, everybody. Yoda Soda. Benji, I'm curious how likely do you think that WB IPs will be licensed out? Ooh, interesting question. To first and third party devs / pubs if they successfully manage to sell their studios or with their studios in-house. And do you think we should be worried for the future of WB Game Studios? Ooh, interesting question. Or do you think they're safe for now and Discovery might just hold on to them if no one is willing to pay the big bucks? These are great questions. So let's piece them out individually, and let's actually start towards the end because that will impact the beginning of the question in terms of licensing. So first off, do I think that WB Game Studios are like in trouble, right? Because you say, do you think they're safe for now? I think so. I mean, I think there's way too much talent at these studios. And they've made some huge hits that I can't just see these studios like closing down, right? Like if WB is unable to sell these studios, do I see a scenario where WB is going to be, or Discovery, who now owns WB, do I see a scenario where they're like, well, we can't sell these teams, so we're just going to shut them down? I can't see that at all. There's way too much talent here, way too much pedigree at studios like Rocksteady and NetherRealm. I just can't see these studios. Do I think they're safe? Yes, because one way or another, these studios will continue to make games. I just can't see them being shut down. Either they're going to be sold or, like you said, will Discovery hold on to them if no one's willing to pay big bucks? I think so. I think they'll hold on to them at least for now, see how stuff like Hogwarts Legacy performs, see how games like Suicide Squad, like Gotham Knights perform. If they can't sell these studios, and those games are huge financial successes, they'll probably just keep things going as is, right? Discovery kind of, the word is, wants to sell these to help offset debt, offset things like that, and just put it in someone else's hands so they can focus more on the movies and TV side, right? Which is what Discovery and WB are known for. Like, that's their main focus. It's not video games. It's TV, streaming, movies, etc. So it kind of makes sense why they want to sell the studios off. But if they can't sell them, I think they will keep them in-house. Now, the other part of your question that's interesting here, though, and I actually don't think I've been asked this, so it's a really interesting question. Do I think they'll license their IPs out to first and third parties? And I noticed you said even if they keep their studios in-house. What a great question. Potentially, Yoda Soda, that is a potential to earn even more money that I didn't quite think about before. So let's say even they're not able to sell these studios, right? Like they just can't get someone to pay them $1 billion or whatever the asking price is. Would they theoretically be like, okay, well, we can't sell these studios off, but if you're a third party or you're a first party and you want to make a Batman game or you want to make an etc., we'll license the IP out for you. I never really thought about that, Yoda Soda, but it doesn't seem impossible. I mean, it's a way to potentially get a lot more money and also lower the risk, right? We've talked about this before. I was asked if Disney's ever going to bring development back in-house, and I said no, because it's just so much less risk for them to just license their IPs out. They're not paying the development costs on this stuff, and they're just getting licensing fees. So, like, it's way less risky for them to do the in-house development. If Discovery's unable to sell these studios, they might be willing to license IPs out, though, because just to get as much money rolling out of video games as possible. Maybe. I didn't think about it, Yoda Soda, but it's not impossible, to be honest with you. It's not. So that's a very interesting question. Venom Harness. Benji Boy. Apparently Square Enix lost $200 million on Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy. This is a huge loss. Do you think this will make devs/pubs scared for Marvel license because losing millions of dollars? Well, here's the thing. I think we need more evidence before any third-party publisher should panic about this, because here's the deal. Here's what I think happened with those games. First of all, Avengers just wasn't the game people wanted it to be. And people forget this. I bring it up all the time, but people always forget this. Avengers had a huge launch. Its launch at the time in the United States, I think it was the second biggest launch ever for a superhero game at the time, behind Spider-Man 2018. Let me make sure. I don't want to say I'm giving you wrong information, but I think so. I think it was the second biggest superhero launch ever in the US. Its launch NPD. Yep. Marvel's Avengers was the best-selling title of September. Launch month sales of the title were the highest for second highest for any superhero game in U.S. history, trailing only Marvel's Spider-Man. So people forget that. Avengers launch was massive. The problem for Avengers, it had no legs. That game sold a ton up front because it was Marvel, it was Avengers, we're getting a big Marvel Avengers game. But this service-based type game and the story and the narrative and everything, whatever, the package didn't live up to what people wanted it to be. And that caused legs to collapse. And I think that also directly impacted Guardians of the Galaxy afterwards. I think people were so put off by Avengers that, A, they saw another Square Enix Marvel game, which made them very worried because they're like, dude, Avengers did not deliver what I wanted it to be. And now we got another Square Enix game coming. It's really hard for me to be optimistic about this game. And then Guardians of the Galaxy, again, people forget this because the game is so good now when you play it. But it had a really rough E3 showing. I'm not sure why, but that game, when they first debuted it at E3, it just looked rough. Like, even the video game footage, the trailers weren't great, the marketing didn't look great, and that game being as good as it was ended up being a big surprise. Like, I don't think most people expected that at all. So I think those were the main factors that affected Square Enix's Marvel games. Now, if this becomes a trend, Venom Harness, if we start to see more and more of these games not deliver in sales, and it's only Insomniac's Spider-Man games that are these giant sales successes, at that point, you probably should start to get worried about paying a huge licensing fee for Marvel games if you're a third-party publisher or third-party studio. So we need to see. But Venom, I wouldn't take Square Enix's issues with Marvel and just say that it's going to impact everyone across the board the same way, because I think those issues were mostly on Square Enix and less Marvel itself. Like I said, we have evidence that there was a lot of demand for that Avengers game. It just didn't deliver what people wanted. So let's see. Let's see how the upcoming slate of Marvel games do. If they're big, then I think this is more of a Square Enix issue than a Marvel issue. And then Eddie had one more follow-up here. Benji, can you please help me out? I'm conflicted. I don't know what to believe. Some say PS5 shortages will be better next year. They will be, according to Sony. Others say 2024. Which one is right? When will we see PS5 in stores? It depends on who you believe. So if you believe Sony, it's not like a theory or a rumor. They outright stated it will be better next year. Now, fixed, like 100% fixed, no, they're not necessarily saying that. But they're saying from 11.5 million to 18 million, quite a bit more PS5s. So if you believe Sony can hit their forecast, Sony's outright telling you that next year shortages are going to improve. Now, there is also people like Intel and other chip manufacturers that say that shortages are going to continue until 2024. I think both can be true. I think Sony can deliver more units this year because maybe things are starting to stabilize, but still not be completely fixed until, yet again, another year after that, 2024, or so, another year or two. So, Eddie, if Sony can hit their 18 million forecast, they'll be better, not 100% fixed, and shortages can continue. Both can be true. Now, when will it be that PS5s are just sitting on store shelves? Probably not for years. Honestly, I don't expect that for another, year or two. Let me make sure I didn't miss any super chats really quick. How long have we been going? Oh, we got time. We got time. Good, because this is a good chat. All right. We got time. Randy Norman. Is Sony playing a very dangerous game with the budget size of their games? Ooh, potentially. It seems like they're spending too much money on first-party games. Why not make more smaller experiences as well? Great question, Randy. Sony used to do this more. Right? You saw this during the PS3 generation and stuff, and in PS2, where they would do smaller projects and also bigger projects. And that really changed with PS4. It was really during the PS4 generation where there were still a couple smaller projects, but they kind of went all in on big, gigantic AAA cinematic single-player games. And it was because they started finding huge success with them. They started just having huge hits that far outpaced, games in previous generations. I mean, the growth in first-party sales for PlayStation Studios from PS1 and PS2, PS3 even to PS4, it was a huge jump. So they started finding so much success with this that they just went all in on huge AAA blockbuster giant games. And they also started getting all these Game of the Year awards and everything, so it became super attractive. I do think they should diversify more, Randy. I don't think they should back off on these big giant budget games at all, because it does that is what the PlayStation fan base has come to expect. A lot of people that buy into the PlayStation ecosystem, they're buying into it for stuff like God of War and Horizon and Spider-Man, and not everyone, but there's a lot of people buying in for those games. So I don't think you necessarily back off of the AAA stuff, but I do think you need to have a little bit more variety. And from rumors, we haven't seen this play out quite yet, though a little bit from what Microsoft's announced. It sounds like Microsoft has a lot bigger range of projects on the way. They have stuff that is a little bit smaller, like what Ninja Theory's working on, that Project Mara game, I think it's called. Sounds like that's a fairly small team. There's rumors that, Obsidian's got some smaller stuff coming. Grounded had a smaller budget and a small staff, but then they also have these huge games, right? They've got the Halo Infinites and the Gears of Wars and stuff. So I think Sony should experiment and have some smaller stuff alongside the bigger stuff, but at the same time, they shouldn't necessarily back off these big projects. I think we had a super chat hit. We did. Super chat. Benji here with a 10. Thank you so much, Benji. Benji, it seems Nintendo is making 46% from hardware, 39% from first-party games, 10% from third-party. Sony's making 31% from DLC/microtransactions, 25% from games, 21% on hardware, and 15% subs. Thoughts? Okay, so I don't have all those numbers directly in front of me right now. I've read through all of the stuff, but that's a lot of numbers to know off the top of my head. So Benji, I'm going to, for the sake of argument, assume that these numbers are currently correct because I don't have every single percentage off the top of my head. So Benji, I'm trusting that this is accurate. Thoughts? Okay. Not surprising at all to me that Nintendo's making big profit off of Switch hardware. A lot of times people don't make a lot of money off hardware, but that's because a lot of times, they bring these prices down over the course of a generation, and also they're using more cutting-edge parts. Switch is using mostly very old hardware in terms of what's in the Switch. If you just look at the chipset, it's not cutting-edge by any means. And they also haven't brought that price down at all. So it's literally still the price it came out at. Still $299. So am I shocked that they're making a ton of revenue and profit off of hardware? Because that's the other thing. Are these revenue or profit? I'm not 100% sure, but trust me, they are making a lot of profit off of hardware. So not shocking. First-party games being gigantic for them, again, not surprising whatsoever. That's primarily what carries Switch's software sales. They do sell some third-party games. It's a myth that Nintendo is selling no third-party, but it is carried vastly by first-party. We know that for sure. That's just a fact. I gave you those top 10 selling Switch games, and they're unbelievable. And we're talking they have first-party games that sell 40 and 30 and 20 million units. It's incredible. And in terms of Sony making so much of their off of DLC microtransactions, not surprising at all. It's stuff like Fortnite, Warzone, all of this stuff. Anything that's sold that's a DLC or microtransaction through the PlayStation Network, they're going to get a cut of it. That's one reason why for Sony and Microsoft, getting these big, giant online ecosystems have been so important for them because they're making a ton of money off of this stuff. It's not just the hardware. It's not just the first-party games, which is really what's carrying Nintendo, right? Like you're pointing out, it's mostly Nintendo's own hardware and mostly Nintendo's own software. They're still getting stuff from other parts, but that's like the main element of the Nintendo business. Sony and Microsoft, yeah, they're getting money from that stuff as well, but just the PlayStation Network, like the overall network, the store, all of that, all of them third-party games they're getting a cut of. All of those DLC and microtransactions are getting a cut of. So these online ecosystems have become massively important for them. So I'm not shocked by any of these numbers at all. All actually make sense. I would say Nintendo long term, if there's one criticism you want to make of Nintendo, because most of their business is so good, it is that. It's their online offerings, it's their store, it's their ecosystem. That is where Nintendo, matter of fact, it's just a fact, they're the farthest behind their competitors in that area. Nintendo is way ahead in terms of first-party sales. Not even Sony can touch Nintendo in terms of first-party software sales. Nope, not happening. Sony does not have a game selling 45 million units first-party like Mario Kart is, or 38 million like freaking Animal Crossing has, or all those 20 million sellers. You know, it's not one or two 20 millions. It's like a lot of 20 millions. So there's areas that Nintendo has a lead on their competitors and hardware, right? I mean, like I said, it's going to outsell the PS4. But the area they're furthest behind that they need to improve is their online ecosystem and their storefront. Yep, for sure. All right, thank you for that super chat. Still got time to hit some more free questions before I bounce. Fernando, is it safe to say that Horizon Forbidden West underperformed? Tough question to answer because we have no context on its overall sales numbers. Here's what I will say, Fernando. Is there enough evidence to say that Horizon Forbidden West sold less than whether you put any weight in what I say or not? Did it sell less than what I expected it to? Yeah, I would say that I've seen enough data now to say that, yes. Forbidden West has sold slower than what I expected out of that game. Now, was that slower than what Sony or Guerrilla were expecting? That I have no idea. Literally, Fernando, no clue. I have no idea what Sony's expectations were for this game in terms of sales, and I have no idea what Guerrilla were forecasting for sales. Sony never gave us any sort of info for that, and they've also never given us a number on this game. So the only comment I can make, Fernando, is do I think it's selling less than what I thought it was going to? Yes. Yeah, I have enough data for that. It is selling less than I thought it was going to. But that doesn't necessarily mean lifetime it will sell less. We need to watch the legs. We still only have a few months of data. Let's see how this thing sold a year from now. Let's see, right? But yeah, it is selling less than I thought, Fernando, for sure. It is. It's selling less than I thought it was going to. Manish. Sony's original forecast for fiscal year 2022 is 22.6 million. Yep, I commented on that off the top. Now it's 18 million. So same as fiscal year 21, it's lower but still higher than the competition. Microsoft doesn't even provide a forecast. Sony invests more in first-party games when they see success in previous entries. Oh, okay, you're just responding to people. Okay, you're responding to people. Yep. It's technically a lower forecast than what they originally said, but it's still high. 18 million, if they can hit that, will be really nice to see. Sorry, I'm looking for a question. A lot of discussion in the chat, which is fine. I'm just trying to pick out your guys' questions. A lot of people saying hi. What is up, Johnny G? What is up, Red Dead Series? What is up, Nintendo Prime? What is up, Marcel? Randy Norman, ZOS and ID next game will be revealed at the Xbox Showcase and will be exclusive. Do you think that is likely? I don't know what that is. ZOS? ZeniMax Online? Are you asking, do I think ZeniMax Online and id's next games will be exclusive? Yes. I don't think there will ever be a Bethesda game that's ever not exclusive again. I don't think so. I think they are all exclusive now, from now on. Well, Xbox and PC and cloud. The only way that might not be true is stuff like they've said in the past, legacy stuff. So things like, if they ever do another Skyrim re-release or a Skyrim remake, I could see something like that being multi-platform because it's been on other consoles before. But like every game currently in development at Bethesda that's like a new game, yeah, I don't think those will ever be on PlayStation again. So, do I think they'll be there? I mean, ZeniMax Online have been working on a new game for a little while now. They did a lot of hiring for it, but I don't know if it's still too early for that game. They're feeling really confident about it, I can say that. Doom Eternal was what? What was that, 2020, right? So it's been 2 years. So that's a maybe. Id's a maybe. Doom Eternal was, March 2020. So it's over 2 years. I would say it is possible. ZeniMax, I think it's too early because it's a big project. So I think ZeniMax Online is probably too early, but not impossible. They have been working on it, but I don't know. Id is... I'd say id's probably more likely because it's been 2 years since Doom Eternal. So possible. Maybe for id. Raven Hunter. Benji, would you agree that today's Nintendo Switch Indie Showcase was garbage? I did not watch it, so I'm not sure, Raven Hunter. I'll be honest, and I hate to say this because I do play indie games. I never watch Nintendo's Indie Showcases. Or even Xbox's Indie Showcases. I don't want to say this and sound bad because I literally love indie games. I just think that showcases of indie games, like big showcases, they usually don't flow well because a lot of indie games aren't necessarily like these big cinematic type things that show really well in trailers. You know what I mean? Like a lot of indie games that I love, even if a trailer is kind of cool, like it feels better like when you play it. A lot of the big AAA games, you know, they are so story focused. They have these cutting edge visuals, so they show really well in a showcase compared to like indies. So I usually don't watch indie showcases, to be honest with you. I play a lot of indie games, but I don't really watch a lot of the showcases. So it might have been garbage. I did not watch it. Couldn't tell you. Oh my god. Red Dead series. Oh boy. Red Dead series. Benji, with the huge success of Morbius, Morbin time, do you think we will see Spider-Man introduced to Morbius verse? Oh my god. Oh, you just killed me. Do I think we will see Spider-Man introduced into Morbius verse? Well, I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no. I don't think Spider-Man's gonna be in Morbius verse. I don't think that game quite, or that movie did quite as well as Sony were hoping. Here's what I'll say. Red Dead, I don't think it's impossible that you ever see Spider-Man in a Venom movie. I don't think you're going to see Spider-Man and Morbius together anytime soon. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm not seeing that. But I won't be shocked if they put like Andrew Garfield in Venom, though. That wouldn't shock me at all. That wouldn't surprise me one bit. Thank you for making me laugh. That just killed me, literally. J-Cat saying, what's up? What is up, J-Cat? What is up? Great to see you in the chat. Thanks for helping mod the channel and be awesome. Wait, Switch did get a price drop? That's hilarious if I was just saying earlier it's not getting a price drop. That's hilarious. Did it really? That's hilarious. Is this accurate? Right when I was saying I don't think it's going to get a price drop. Scrolling to the bottom of the chat. Did Switch really get a price drop? Is this true? Hashtag Morbius sweep in the chat. Chat, let me know. Did Switch really get a price drop to $269? Because if so, that is hilarious that they would do that right when I say, I don't think they're going to drop price. Let me know, chat. Find that hard to believe, but it might be right. If so, that's a surprise to me. Didn't see that one coming. King of the Dry Bones, though, saying Switch got price dropped to $259. That's crazy. If so, I don't think they needed it. Yes. Okay. Wow. I missed that. Interesting. When did this happen? During chat? Crazy. Got one this morning. Ah, interesting. I missed this. I don't think they needed it. Interesting. This is interesting. I'll be honest with you. This makes me more think that a successor is coming next year. I don't think they needed it to hit 21 million this year. I don't think they needed it at all. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. This... Oh, it was only temporary. Okay. Giancarlo, it was only temporary. It's back to 2. Okay. That makes more sense to me. Okay. That makes more sense. That makes more sense. It's a temporary price cut. Okay. That's very cool. But if this was permanent, I would have been a lot more on board with, hey, Switch 2 is coming next year. Because I don't think they have a reason to cut price long term. So if that would have been accurate, like it's now permanently $259, I would have said Switch 2 is coming next year. I like outright. That data point alone would have said to me, Switch 2 is coming next year because they don't need to cut price this year. So if they're doing it preparing for the next gen. So interesting, but temporary for now. Let's see what happens long term. Casual Gamer, what's your thoughts on Gotham Knights being canceled for last gen? Oh, we talked about that. Could this become industry standard? We talked about that. Could devs start canceling last gen games left and right? No. Casual Gamer, this isn't going to happen left and right. Like I said, I think it's only going to happen for games that they just can't get to work on the last gen. Chris, have we lost all hope for Silksong coming in 2022? This game is virtually vaporware at this point. Yeah, Silksong has become one of those games that it exists, but it exists in our hopes and dreams. It will launch eventually, but who knows when. Silksong has become one of those games that like disappears for like 6 years and then suddenly one day does come out. Will it come out this year, 2022? I'm highly, highly, highly doubtful, but it would be cool. I have no idea when that game will ever come out. It has been lost to the void. Silksong is the next The Last Guardian. When did that get announced? When was Silksong announced? When was that announced? I mean, it's years now. It was announced in 2019. Woo! Yeah, we'll see. February 2019 too, so it's been 3 years since it was announced. Wild. Wild. Who knows? February 14th, 2019. It was announced over 3 years ago, and we still don't know anything about when that thing's coming. All right. Logan Hardy, Benji, do you believe Ragnarok will also not break a record for Sony? Ooh, great question. Great question. Also, PS5 stock is truly limiting sales of these titles. I agree. I mean, these games were tracking huge through marketing pre-release. I agree with all that, actually. Logan Hardy, you're spot on. Pre-release marketing tracking for, like, even Forbidden West was huge. If you looked at the numbers that the trailers were doing and stuff, and even just discussion online, tracking great. So I do agree that I think PS5 stock is limiting these sales to a degree. I do think so. Even though they're cross-gen, I think some people are just waiting to play them on PS5. But do I think Ragnarok won't break a record because of Forbidden West? Man, what a great question. I will say no. It won't beat The Last of Us Part 2's 4 million. In 3 days, but I still do think it will get over 3. That's what I'll say, but I could be totally wrong. But if someone said, Benji, you got to make your prediction right now, I say no, it doesn't beat The Last of Us Part 2's 4 million in 3 days, but it does get over 3 million in 3 days. That would be my prediction. That's where I would put it. But we'll have to see. I don't know. I could be totally wrong. I overestimated what Forbidden West was going to do, so I might be too bullish on Ragnarok as well. But I think the idea of it beating The Last of Us Part 2's 4 million in 3 days probably pretty unlikely given what we saw out of Forbidden West. But you never know. Antonio, do I think Elden Ring retains number 1 on NPD? Nope. Mentioned that off the top. I think that's going to go to either MLB The Show 22 or Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga. Mazio, do you think hype for PS5 will fade somehow before the component shortage ends? Also, hello, Benji. How is life going for you? Mazio, personal life could be better. Kind of mentioned this a little bit on the last chat. Just going through a certain stressful thing at the moment. I'm hoping I got good news in the next week or two, and then hopefully I can be less stressed out. In terms of do I think hype for PS5 will fade? No, I don't think so. Especially because this gen has really barely started. Like, in terms of like software. Right now, I think it can feel easy to be like somewhat underwhelmed by the current generation because it is off to a slow start. That's just the reality. There's been some awesome games, but it hasn't been like a stacked, non-stop release slate because we all know why. The pandemic delayed so much software. So I could see right now, if you're like either don't have a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series and being like, I mean, there's not a ton of stuff that's on it that I can't play on my Xbox One or PS4 right now anyways, so I'm not like that pumped for it. Or if you have these consoles being like they're really cool, but I haven't been blown away by this generation yet, it's because it did get to a slow start because of the pandemic. But I think that like once these big current gen only games start hitting, which we haven't really seen yet, there's been barely any current gen only games so far. Once these big current gen only titles start hitting and they start hitting fairly regularly, I think the hype will really be high. So we're just in a bit of a weird time right now for these consoles, but I don't expect that the hype for next gen is just going to go away. I think I might have had a couple super chats or one or two. Let's see. One. Wait. Nope, two. Yep, two super chats. Highlander001 with a 5. Thank you so much, Highlander. That's your second one. This might be controversial, but with Disney, Microsoft, Bungie making statements about hot button issues, do you see a backlash from their fans? So here's the thing. I'm not a super political person in general. Do I think that these companies should back off from making statements? No. It's their business. It's their company. They have every right, just like every individual person does, to make a statement on whatever they want, whatever they believe. I make it very clear. I'm very left-wing. I'm very liberal. That's just where I am politically. I'm super left-wing. Like, I'm about as left-wing as you get, to be perfectly honest with you. So I personally am aligning with these companies in their statements. But do I think that they should like back off from them even if there were to be some backlash? No. It's you can say whatever you want. You can take whatever stance you want. That's part of, if you truly believe in freedom. And when I say that, Highlander, I'm saying the proverbial you. I'm not saying you specifically. I see a lot of times people that claim to be super pro-freedom are also the same people that say they don't want people making statements. You can't have them both ways. If you truly believe in freedom and you truly believe in free speech, that means any company, any person, they can make any stance that they want to. And so you might be upset with the company. And again, I'm using the proverbial you. I'm not using like you as in Highlander. The proverbial you might get upset at Disney for saying something or upset at Bungie. And that's within your right as well. But it's also within these companies' rights to make any stance or statement that they so wish. So, no, I'm not opposed to it at all because I think people should be able to speak their mind. But again, I'm not super political. So like I avoid most of this stuff. I don't get into any of these debates because I have learned that online it's virtually impossible to change people's minds on this stuff. So I just let everyone else argue. Y'all can argue and fight, and I'm going to just do my thing. Benji with a 5. Benji, Doctor Strange 2 could join the 1 billion club. Yeah, it might. It's looking good. Crazy. Which other Marvel characters can bring 1 billion apart from Spidey, Iron Man, and Black Panther? Ooh, great question. Probably Thor. Thor Love and Thunder tracking is huge. So Doctor Strange 2 has a very good shot at 1 billion. We need to see how legs are. It's already over 500 million and it hasn't even been a week. Just crossed that marker today. Just passed over 500 million at the box office today. So very good chance it hits 1 billion. It's not a lock yet, but it would have to fall off really hard. There is some reason to question if legs are going to be spectacular because this movie has decent word of mouth on Twitter. Surprisingly, very good word of mouth. But if you look at like the cinema score and stuff, it was only a B+. So put it this way, I'm not expecting Strange 2 to have the best legs for a Marvel movie, but 1 billion is still within reach. What other ones? I think there's a great chance Thor Love and Thunder hits 1 billion. Ragnarok hit what? 700 something million? What was Thor Ragnarok's box office? I want to say 700 million. Ooh, it's even higher. 854. It's going to hit 1 billion. Yeah. Thor will hit 1 billion. If Thor Love and Thunder is good, it's your next $1 billion movie. So yes, Thor. The answer would be the very next Marvel movie. Ragnarok was at 854. And we've seen this stuff only accelerate, and the trailer has had massive views. So I would say Thor Love and Thunder, I would put it at like, if it's good, if it's a good movie, I'd put that at like 80 or 90% chance it hits $1 billion. Because the last Thor movie only missed it by less than 150 million. All right, a few more questions. I'm going to take like 10 more minutes and I'm out. Sorry, I wish I could get to more. This was a great chat today. Great chat. But I only have time for a couple more questions. Ty Dame, with the success of Switch and Steam Deck, Sony's crazy for not pursuing the handheld market, right? I think something that could play all the games available on PS4 on the go would be wildly successful. Great question, Ty. I think the main reason Sony doesn't do this, there is clearly still demand in the handheld market, but even Nintendo right now doesn't have a handheld only platform, right? Theirs is it's a hybrid. It's a home console and it's a handheld. Even Nintendo themselves moved away from dedicated handheld only. And Steam Deck is doing very well, but I don't know, honestly, Ty, I don't know if there is still a demand high enough to support a standalone secondary handheld only console. So it would depend. If Sony had something that was like just an additional thing that was priced for profit right off the bat, it would have to instantly be profitable to justify this. If it was priced for profit and it wasn't designed to be this huge standalone ecosystem that's getting new games that are exclusive to it. If it was, like you said, Ty, a literal handheld PS4, it just played whatever's on the PS4 and it was priced for profit, maybe. Something like that maybe would be worth doing, because I think you could sell some of those, but is there enough life in the handheld only market to have a complete ecosystem, something brand new like the Vita and PSP were, getting its own games, that is its own complete separate thing? I don't think so. I really truly do not think there's enough there for that. But if it was like, hey, it just instantly accesses the entire PlayStation 4 store, like just instantly, every game that's on PS4 can play natively on this, I actually think that would sell. Yeah, I actually think you could sell a lot of those. So something like that might be cool. It's not going to sell 100 million units, but could you sell, 20 million units or so of this thing? And if it's priced for profit, could that be a cool thing to do? Maybe. Yeah, maybe just literally a handheld PS4. Possibly, yeah. But I just don't think making like a Vita 2. I don't think so. I don't think there's enough for that. Dante's also asking about, don't I think Sony need to announce something? Yeah, I've had barely anything to tweet about for PlayStation. I agree. I think that Sony do need to talk soon. There's hardly anything to talk about with PlayStation right now. Like I said, I'm even seeing hardcore Sony fans just kind of tweeting random stuff. And again, I don't mean this as like an insult. I love PlayStation. In fact, I've played my PS5 way more than my Xbox Series this year. It's not even close. But I've noticed even my big Sony hardcore fans that I follow, it's just like really random tweets. It's just like, I love Sony. It's not like news, because there's nothing to talk about right now for Sony in terms of news besides financials. So hopefully they have something soon. Abu Manjur says, Matt suggested Elden Ring has done amazingly this month. Oh, I'm sure it has. If it's number one again, wow, that would be mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. I don't think it will, Abu, but if it's number one MPD again, my mind will be blown. Right now, I'm expecting it at number 3, behind Lego and MLB The Show. But if it's number 1 again, that'd be unbelievable. Michael Yu, Elden Ring continues to be a juggernaut. Yep. It's been on Steam's top 10 global sales charts for 20 weeks now. And yeah, we actually got a number. 13.4 million as of March 31st, right? Which is obviously way higher now. That was over a month ago. Wasn't it 13.4 million? Yeah, it was. So as of March 31st, we're now in May 11th. So this is well over a month ago. That game was at 13.4 million. Tracks with what I was saying, where I believe now it's over 15 million, but under 20 million. So, yeah, it's a juggernaut. Juggernaut. It's going to sell over 20 million units this year for sure. Ishan, what do you guys think about Switch Lite sales being counted with Switch? It's technically not a console, just a handheld. I mean, the Lite is the least popular model. Well, technically it's OLED, but OLED's basically the same thing as the regular Switch. So, I mean, it does get separated out sometimes, but it still is just a Switch. So if you mean like into the total, I mean, it's still the exact same platform. It's handheld only, but it's just like part of the Switch family, and it's definitely the least popular model. So, yes, it is definitely the main Switch that's carrying Switch sales. You know, like if there had only been a Switch Lite, like what I was talking about with the, like, should Sony do another handheld successor? Do I think if there's the Switch itself, there was no, you connect it to a home TV, do I think if it was only just like the Switch Lite, that would be selling the volume that we have now? Not even close. No, it would not sell even close to what it has. But the Lite is still part of the Switch family, so it makes sense it's counted with regular Switch. Kelligrim, what is up, man? Long time no see, buddy. How you doing? Benji, I recently saw a headline saying that the U.S. government was looking into funding chip production domestically. Yes, this is true. If this comes to pass, do you think it would help with console sales? It'd help with everything. I think one thing we learned during the pandemic was it's a big mistake to depend on basically one country to provide most of the world's chips. It doesn't make any sense. So I think that's one thing that the pandemic really taught us. And this isn't like an anti-China thing. It's just like, it doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense to have literally the whole world's essentially, mostly, there's some outside of China, but the vast bulk of chip production is done in China. It doesn't make sense for the world to essentially depend on one country to do this, because if anything goes wrong, anything, who knows what, right? It could be a pandemic. It could be China goes to war with someone. I mean, who knows, right? I'm literally talking hypotheticals. It just doesn't make sense to depend on China to provide all of these chips. So it is true, Kelligrim, that the U.S. government is looking into doing some chip manufacturing production here domestically. It would make sense for a lot of countries to look into that. And it would also, hopefully, if you have more of these facilities making chips, ease the global shortage issues. So yeah, Kelligrim, do I think it would help with consoles? Yes, but this would be years down the line. It takes a long time to get these facilities running. That's part of the issue. That's why when the pandemic hit and China is locked down and stuff, the world didn't just instantly start making, their own chips. Like, well, we can't depend on China right now, so we're just going to make our own. It's because these facilities are an enormous undertaking, and it takes a long time. So if this is going to happen, will it help with consoles eventually? Yes, but this would be years down the line. Years. We're talking, it ain't going to help consoles in the next 1 to 2 years. We're talking in the next 5 years. So, yes, it's a good idea. Hopefully they do it, but it'll be a while before you see this pay off. And Ishan, yep, U.S. government has put massive resources into chip production, 30 to 40 billion USD worth of projects in Arizona. Exactly. Yep. So eventually this is all going to pay off. It's going to be good, but it's going to take some years to get rolling. But it's smart. It's smart. Yeah, JCat, I think it's fair to count the Switch Lite. It's literally the same hardware and games. Doesn't matter if it's handheld. I agree. Yep. It's still the same platform. It just can't connect to a TV, but the games and stuff are identical. All right, I'm going to take 2 more questions and I got to go. Sorry, I wish I could do more, but this has been a really long stream and I got stuff going on. So 2 questions and I'm out. I'm going to do 1 because I just saw it and it's on the bottom of chat and it's a good question. Biglow25, Benji, what do you think of the streaming box that is coming from Microsoft/Xbox in the next 12 months? Yes, this is rumored. A streaming stick, streaming box, whatever you want to call it. Basically, streaming xCloud, Game Pass coming. It is a brilliant decision, Biglow. one of the smartest Microsoft could make. So do I think that a streaming stick is suddenly going to sell more than Xbox Series and more people are going to be playing via that? No, right? I've talked about this a lot, and Microsoft has the same outlook, which is smart. Streaming is an additional part of their overall ecosystem. It's not the main, it's not the only focus, it's just an additional part. It is brilliant. If you have a very solid streaming setup like what current xCloud is, and you have that paired with Game Pass, it makes all the sense in the world to have a cheap streaming stick that people could just buy, hook into their TV, subscribe to Game Pass Ultimate, and be streaming games. It's brilliant. Again, I'm not expecting this thing to come out and sell 100 million units and suddenly the game is completely changed for Microsoft, right? Keep these expectations realistic on performance, but it makes all the sense in the world. There's no reason not to do this. Zero reason. It's only has an upside because I doubt it would cost a ton of money to make a streaming stick. I mean, right, this thing is not going to be near the investment it would be to make a brand new Xbox in terms of R&D. Nowhere close. And it's just giving people more ways to access your games and potentially, the good part for Microsoft, potentially getting you more Game Pass Ultimate subscribers because they go hand in hand. So, yeah, smart. Absolutely smart. Absolutely smart. Makes all the sense in the world to do that. All right, last one. I got time for one more and I got to go. Thank you for a great chat. What up, Super Sharky? What is up, man? Super Sharky, what is up, my man? Wow, I actually hit most of the questions today. I am shocked. Did I hit them all? Because this is like, I see a lot of talking, which is cool. I love to see you guys talk. I'm just saying, I think I hit every question. Zid, are you going to stream the Xbox Bethesda Showcase? Wish I could do a live reaction. I'm going to be on vacation. So I'll be covering it. I'm just going to watch it from vacation. So I'll be tweeting about it, watching it. But I can't do a reaction stream because I will literally be on the beach. So nope. I'm sorry. Wish I could. I love doing the live reactions to the big showcases with you guys. But I will be on vacation. So I'll be covering it. You'll see me tweeting about it. But I can't do a live reaction. All right, I think that's it. Yeah, we got it, baby. We got it. Dude, we got it. The Highlander said, missed my super chat. I think I hit it. Yeah, that was probably just earlier. We're good, dude. I hit them all. It's like the first time ever. If I did happen to miss your question, I apologize. I think I hit all the questions. Like I said, lots of comments, lots of discussion, but I'm not really seeing any more questions. And if I did miss one, I apologize. Still checking. All right, everyone, I'm going to bounce. Thank you for a great chat. Thank you for a great show. Like the video if you haven't already. Helps the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to my channel if you're not. We do one of these every single week. I will be back next week with another live chat. Follow me on Twitter if you're not already. I'm just Benji-Sales on Twitter, same as YouTube. And I'm going to bounce. Thank you so much, guys. This was an awesome chat. I loved the questions. Stay safe. Play some games, and I'll see you either on Twitter later today or I'll see you on YouTube next week, everybody.